Hello, everybody, and welcome into the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Motes. Well, the Winter Olympics continue motoring along, and they'll soon be wrapping up. I've loved watching the games, but to be honest, I probably haven't watched as many different competitions as I normally do. Probably because of the time difference between Italy and the East Coast of the United States. Even when I try to avoid learning about the results, a lot of it still seeps through. So I haven't really watched much of the games in the evening after about 4 or 5 o'clock. But still, I've been all in on the curling. I've watched every single game for the U.S., from the mixed doubles to the men's 4-person curling team, to the women's 4-person curling team. It's been awesome so far. Also, big news, I'm now 48 years old, as my birthday was earlier this week. I didn't do anything special, but my mother did make me this dessert that she makes with cherry pie filling and pretzels and cream cheese. It was absolutely delicious. But of course, I'm burying the lead, because it's spring training time, people, with the first practice games starting today. Listener, you'll remember how bad the Baltimore Orioles were last year, because I told you about it almost every episode. Well, today's the day to start turning it all around for 2026. I've been encouraged with some of the moves that the team made in the offseason, but I'm still skeptical that the O's have done enough with their pitching staff to really become competitive. But we'll see. I'm willing to give Baltimore until May before I go all doom and gloom again for this season. So fingers crossed, they start a lot better in April than they did last season. But that's enough for the sports ball report for today. Let's start today's show. And we'll start it with a listener question. Today's question comes from Robin, who says, "Hello, Aaron. I watched The Return of Jafar with one of my friends, and he got the impression that Jafar is a crude version of Senator Palpatine. When he looks human, or disguises himself as human, he thinks like a human with limitations and manipulations. When he looks like a supernatural creature, he thinks like a beast. The same with Darth Sidious. Disney uses visual form to dictate psychological form. What do you think?" Well, thank you very much for the question, Robin. That's very good insight. I think you and your friend are mostly correct. When Palpatine looks like a typical senator or the chancellor, he acts like a typical politician for the most part. And when he's the emperor, the Dark Lord of the Sith, he's supernatural evil. He's vile. He's a monster. So in that way, I do think Sidious acts very much like Jafar. The only thing that I would disagree with is that I don't think Palpatine changes the way he thinks based on his outward appearance. I think he changes the way he interacts with the outside world that way. I think he always thinks like a monster. He's just really good at playing the long game. So, he's willing to act like a normal person when he is in his senator or chancellor persona, even if he's still thinking like a Sith Lord. Thanks again for the question, Robin. Listener, if you'd like to ask a question, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at SW Legends Lounge. And if you'd like to get your voice on the show, just record a short message and email it into me. But please record it in MP3 audio format. Now it's time for today's show, as I continue my journey through the young reader stories in the Jedi Apprentice series. Today, I'll be talking about book number 13 through book number 16, all written by Jude Watson. The titles of those stories are The Dangerous Rescue, The Ties That Bind, The Death of Hope, and The Call to Vengeance. Listener, grab yourself a drink. Let's head in to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Book number 13 is called The Dangerous Rescue. It wraps up a 3-book arc where an evil scientist named Jenna Zan Arbor, who does experiments on Force users and who had hired a dangerous bounty hunter to kill one of Qui-Gon's friends, a cafe owner named Dee Dee, who the scientists thought came into possession of her stolen datapad. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fought off the bounty hunter in an earlier story, but Dee Dee was wounded by a toxic dart, and Qui-Gon was captured and sent to Zan Arbor's lab. Eventually, Obi-Wan and Dee Dee's daughter Astri tracked Qui-Gon down, infiltrated the lab, and found the antitoxin to cure Dee Dee. However, Qui-Gon discovered that Zan Arbor was holding another Force user prisoner, and he decided to stay in the lab. So, we're all up to date from the last 2 books. This final story begins with the Jedi Order sending Adigalia and her Padawan Ciri Tachi with Obi-Wan to rescue Qui-Gon on Simpla 12. The Jedi team up with a group of local thieves to talk their way into the lab, but the plan quickly goes sideways. The Jedi are attacked by Zan Arbor's guard droids. Qui-Gon joins them, and together, the 4 Jedi cut through the droids, destroying Zan Arbor's defenses. But the fight gives the scientist time to escape. Adigalia tells Obi-Wan that the Jedi Council believes Zan Arbor's other captive is the elderly Jedi Master Nor Raya. As the Jedi prepare to chase after the scientist, Obi-Wan receives a message. It's from Astri. She's been injured trying to track down the bounty hunter, Ona Nobis, and is currently in a med center on the planet Saurus. Qui-Gon decides to send Obi-Wan and Ciri to Saurus while he and Adigalia try to find Jenna Zan Arbor. Obi-Wan and Ciri do find Astri, but it's not in a hospital. It's in Ona Nobis' hideout. They discover the bounty hunter is headed to the planet Belasco to meet up with Zan Arbor. Obi-Wan tells Qui-Gon and the 4 Jedi rendezvous on Belasco, the homeworld of Senator Uta Sorn, the senator who had used to be Jenna Zan Arbor's patron. Eventually, the Jedi discover that Sorn and Zan Arbor are still working together. The scientist had developed a bacteria to poison Belasco's water supply, while the senator had backed a fake company that developed a cure for the poison. Together, they were poised to make millions of credits. But the Jedi reveal the scheme, rescue Master Raya, and the 2 women are sent to prison. The story ends with Dee Dee and Astri reopening their cafe and inviting the Jedi to share a meal together. So, as I said, this was the final story of a 3-book arc. I enjoyed this story. I enjoyed this arc overall. It is a fun adventure story. It's a fun mystery. It's a fun detective story. There are parts of it where I thought maybe it could use a little more humor. I thought this was the type of story where Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan could maybe have a little bit of a buddy cop vibe, but it was played pretty straight. One thing I would say about this book in particular, I think the author, Jude Watson, should have gone into a little more about why Jenna Zan Arbor had captured Master Nor Raya and why she was performing experiments on him. I understand that overall, the reason is she was trying to learn more about the Force. But why Master Raya in particular? It seems like the Jedi Council didn't really know that Master Raya had been abducted, and it took them many weeks before it became noticeable that the elderly Jedi Master was not where he was supposed to be, that the Jedi did not feel his passing in the Force. So that would tell me, if I was a member of the Jedi Council, that this master is still alive somewhere, but his home, his dwelling, everywhere he has been over the last few weeks, the last couple months, just doesn't seem right, that he has completely dropped off the face of the galaxy. So I would have liked to have had a little more with this character. I would say I preferred the first 2 books in this 3-book arc to this last one. Again, there's nothing wrong with them. They're fun, adventure, detective stories. But in my opinion, the way this book wraps up is a little confusing. I don't have a problem with Genazan Arbor and Senator Sorn collaborating with each other to create a bacteria to poison the water on Belasco and then miraculously come up with a cure and sell the cure. I'm all for a good political corruption story. What I don't understand fully in reading this arc is why the senator, after her Force-sensitive son had died, after being experimented upon by Genazan Arbor, why she would still go along with this scheme with the scientist. I know these are younger reader stories, but I do think that relationship needed to be explained a little more. Now, we have another story where Obi-Wan and Ciri are together. Their dynamic is fun because I think on some level Obi-Wan can see the way he used to think in Ciri. She's about 2 to 3 years younger than Obi-Wan. She's very much more black and white. And even though Obi-Wan is still pretty black and white in the way he views the galaxy, it's not as much as it was when he was younger. So I like the stories with their dynamic. It does seem in this story that Ciri has gotten over her feeling betrayed that Obi-Wan had temporarily left the Jedi Order. She has now fully accepted him back. So seeing that growth in the character as this series of books goes along, I like that. Because there has been some passage of time. This arc takes place many months, maybe even a year after the last time we saw Obi-Wan and Ciri together in one of these stories. So I do like that. I would like to get back to some of the way Obi-Wan challenges Qui-Gon and some of the way Qui-Gon forces Obi-Wan to think differently. I think we've had a number of books now in a row where they're very much in sync as Master and Padawan. And I do believe the author should show that as their Master and Apprentice dynamic continues. But for me, and I think for many Star Wars fans, I'm not going to say the majority because I don't know if it's the majority, but I do think for me and many Star Wars fans, one of the things we find appealing about the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan Master and Padawan dynamic is the way both of them challenge the other. And I just think there have been a number of stories now in a row where we just haven't seen that as much. And hopefully going forward, we'll see a little more of it. So, listener, coming up after the break, I'll talk more about the Jedi Apprentice series. I'm Aaron Moats, and you're listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge. Thank you for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, where we celebrate the books from Star Wars Legends. But let me take a moment and recommend a book from Star Wars canon. Convergence is the first story in Phase 2 of the High Republic Publishing Initiative. The twin planets of Irem and Arano have been fighting for generations. When the Jedi sends a delegation to broker a ceasefire, it quickly becomes apparent that the two worlds are merely pawns in someone else's game. Unravel the mystery in Convergence by Zoraida Cordova. Welcome back to the Star Wars Legends Lounge, the show that celebrates the books from Star Wars Legends. I'm Aaron Moats, and today I'm talking about book number 13 through book number 16 in the Jedi Apprentice Young Reader series. The 14th book in the series is called The Ties That Bind. While training together in the wilderness, Qui-Gon receives an ominous vision of his closest Jedi friend, Tal, dying. He and Obi-Wan rush back to the Jedi Temple and learn that Tal is about to leave for a mission on the planet New Absalon. Now, 6 years ago, Qui-Gon and Tal went on a mission to New Absalon together. There, they helped protect two girls after their father, Ewain, the planetary governor, had been murdered. Today, Tal offers to retrieve the sisters, who are now young adults, and bring them to Coruscant for safety. Qui-Gon insists on accompanying Tal, but she refuses and angrily storms out of the Jedi Council chambers. Tal's mission was supposed to last only a few days, but flash forward 2 weeks, and the Jedi haven't heard anything from her. Qui-Gon has another vision of Tal dying, and he decides it's time for him and Obi-Wan to go looking for her. On New Absalon, Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan meet with the two sisters, Alani and Aretha. When Qui-Gon asks where Tal is, the sisters say they didn't even know she was here. They say they never contacted her. Now the Jedi begin their search for Tal. During their investigation, they discover turmoil simmering beneath the surface on the planet between the wealthy class, known as the civilized, and the workers. Decades ago, the civilized had employed a secret police force called the Absolutes to terrorize and torture the workers. Now the civilized are trying to take back their power, and the Absolutes have returned. The Jedi meet with two worker freedom fighters, Irini and Lenz, who believe Roan, the new planetary governor, was behind the murder of Ewain. While they're talking, the Absolutes raid the meeting and take the Jedi captive. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are blindfolded and transported to another building where they discover Tal is there, but she's not being held prisoner. Tall has infiltrated and is working undercover with the Absolutes. Tall says the Absolutes are building a fortune and a cache of weapons. She's decided to stay undercover while Qui-Gon investigates Egwene's murder. Tall tells Qui-Gon to start with Roan's brother, a rich businessman named Manix. The questioning of Manix goes nowhere. He denies playing a part in Egwene's murder, and he also believes that his brother Roan is innocent of the accusation. So the Jedi go to the governor's mansion to talk to Roan. But just as they get there, they're attacked by probe droids. In the confusion, a group of kidnappers grab the sisters and head off in a speeder. A little while later, the kidnappers promise to release the young women, but only if Roan resigns as governor. Roan agrees to the kidnappers' terms, but before the governor can meet with them, he's killed in another probe droid attack. Shortly after, the kidnappers do release Alani and Aretha. The governor's security chief, a man named Balog, says the civilized and the Absolutes want to meet with the workers to try and lower the temperature around the capital city on New Absalom. Tall agrees to attend as a Jedi mediator, blowing her cover. But before she leaves for the meeting, Qui-Gon pulls Tall aside and tells her that he loves her. Tall says she feels the same way about him. The two pledge their lives to one another before Tall and Balog leave for the peace meeting. The next morning, Irene arrives. Irene says it was someone in planetary security who had kidnapped the sisters. Qui-Gon tells Irene that he believes Balog is hiding something. He says Irene should be careful of him at the peace meeting later today. What meeting? Irene asks. She says the workers don't know anything about any peace meeting. Book number 15 is called The Death of Hope. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan set off to find Balog and Tall. They track the two to a quarry where they're followed by Aretha. The young woman says her sister Alani is trying to take over the government. Aretha says Alani was behind Roan's murder and Tall's kidnapping. The three are then attacked by a group of rock workers in the quarry who mistake them for a group of Absolutes. Obi-Wan is injured in the attack, but when the workers discover who the Jedi are, they take them back to their camp and give Obi-Wan medical treatment. When Obi-Wan is able to travel again, the Jedi and Aretha set back out on Balog's trail. Eventually, they find an Absolute hideout in the quarry. The three sneak inside and locate where Balog is holding Tall, in a sensory deprivation container that was used to drug and torture workers during the war years ago. As the Jedi go after Tall, Aretha heads off to find transportation. When Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan close in on Tall's cell, an alarm blares. They've been discovered. Balog orders his followers to destroy the hideout. Luckily, the Jedi and Aretha get Tall out before the base explodes. They free Tall from the sensory deprivation chamber, but she's extremely weak. Her life force is waning. The Jedi rush Tall back to the Capital Med Center, but it's too late. Her internal injuries are too severe. Qui-Gon sits by Tall's bedside as she dies. When Tall passes away, Obi-Wan goes to his master to help Qui-Gon deal with his grief. But Qui-Gon pushes his Padawan away. It's time for Qui-Gon Jinn to get his revenge. Book number 16, and the final book in this arc, is called The Call to Vengeance. Obi-Wan informs the Jedi Council about Tal's death and the political turmoil on New Absalom. The next day, Master Mace Windu arrives along with Tal's Padawan, Bant Irin. Together, the Jedi learn about the existence of a list of workers who gave up information when they were tortured by the Absolutes back during the war. Qui-Gon believes Tal was killed because Balog either thought that Tal had the list or she knew where it was. The Jedi learned that a worker named Oleg had the list at one time, and Qui-Gon tracks the man to a warehouse where Oleg is waiting for a mysterious buyer. But when Qui-Gon arrives, he finds Oleg dead. The next day, the Jedi learned that Balog's probe droids have attacked and killed a legislator in New Absalom, one who may have had the list. When Qui-Gon goes to investigate, Aretha appears and tells him that she thinks Manix has the list of traitors. Now, Manix doesn't, but when Qui-Gon arrives at his mansion, the police arrive and try to arrest him for the murder of the legislator. Obi-Wan and Mace help Qui-Gon escape, and a little while later, Obi-Wan tells his master that Aretha is a traitor. She's been lying to them from the beginning. Obi-Wan says that Aretha is in league with her sister Alani and the Absolutes, and together they want to take control of the government. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan confront Aretha, and the young woman admits to everything. Eventually, the Jedi learn the location of the Absolutes' secret underground hideout in the capital. They infiltrate the hideout and are attacked by guard droids. Qui-Gon allows his grief and rage to take a hold of him, slicing through the droids like a man possessed. When he's done, he finds Balog. But just before he kills the traitor, Qui-Gon hears a voice, Tal's voice, telling him to stop. Qui-Gon takes a step back, horrified at how close he came to falling to the dark side of the Force. The story ends with the Jedi exposing Alani and Aretha's treachery. The women and Balog are taken into custody, and the 4 Jedi return to Coruscant with Tal's body. Obi-Wan tries again to comfort his master, but Qui-Gon still has a way to go to work through his grief over his love's passing. So, I really enjoyed this arc. It may be my second favorite arc of the stories that I have read in this series. There is some contention between Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, mostly with Obi-Wan trying to check Qui-Gon at different parts of the story. The first time we see Qui-Gon checked, it's by Tal. She is offended that Qui-Gon doesn't believe that she can fulfill the Council's mission of going to New Absalom and bringing the 2 sisters to Coruscant. She's offended that Qui-Gon doesn't think she can do that by herself. But after that, after Tal goes incommunicado for a couple weeks, when Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan go to New Absalom to investigate, Obi-Wan continually challenges Qui-Gon in how rash he is becoming. You know, the Qui-Gon that we see in The Phantom Menace, the Qui-Gon that we see in both books in Legends and books in canon, he's the one that's constantly telling Obi-Wan to stop, to think, to assess the situation, and then open yourself up to the living force. Open yourself up to the cosmic force, to look for guidance in how to make a decision or how to go about putting your decision into action. In this story, Qui-Gon is extremely hasty in the first book. Qui-Gon is extremely hasty in the second book. We learn why in the second book. He and Tall pledge their lives to one another. They tell each other they love each other. And of course, we know that as Jedi, they are not supposed to form these deep emotional attachments. Regardless of my feeling about the way Star Wars, and particular George Lucas, represents this concept, I think the way it's done here might be the best representation of the way I think about forming loving attachments as far as Jedi go. In the conversation that Qui-Gon and Tall have when they tell each other about their feelings for one another, they have a pretty mature conversation about how they can never be together. They will be apart for long stretches of time for most of their lives. And as Tall is dying, she tells Qui-Gon, there's nothing you can do about this. Death is a part of life. I'm crossing over into the Force, but I'll be waiting for you. That might be the most mature conversation about love as it pertains to a Jedi that I have read or I have seen or I have heard of in all of Star Wars, be it Legends or canon, and that it comes in a young reader book, a Legends young reader book. It's amazing. It really is. I was almost floored when I read it. I don't understand why we can't get more of that in Star Wars. We just get this very black and white binary view of love and affection and the dangers of attachment when it comes to members of the Jedi Order. Now I know what you're saying, Aaron. You're saying all of that, but then Qui-Gon goes and proves in the third book, The Call to Vengeance, about why it's dangerous. And listener, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Qui-Gon goes and proves why it is so dangerous for a Jedi to form emotional attachments on such a deep level. You're absolutely right. But if we can have these sorts of conversations about how having normal, deep, loving emotions could work with the Jedi Order, I don't see an issue of how it couldn't eventually come to a point where the Jedi are allowed to engage in loving relationships. I just don't. When something happens to one of the partners of a Jedi, will that Jedi go through the stages of grief? Yes. But I don't think that automatically means that that Jedi is going to come close to falling to the dark side of the Force. If a Jedi's partner is in danger somewhere on a mission, I don't think that automatically means that that Jedi is going to drop everything he or she is doing to go after the one that's in trouble. I think if Jedi really are the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, if they really do commune deeply with the Force, allow the Force to guide their decisions and their actions, they should be able to process their feelings to the point where they can both have loving relationships and be accepting of the fact that those loving relationships will have issues, will have hurdles, there will be danger, and eventually those relationships will end. To this point, I have not seen it. Now, I have not began the third phase of the High Republic stories in canon. We see a few conversations in phase 1 that deal with this type of subject, but I think I need to read through the entire High Republic series before I offer my opinions on how these types of relationships are presented. So, the two big things about this arc, we just went over the one. The other one about Obi-Wan checking Qui-Gon in the first 2 books about how hasty he is, and then in the third book, trying to help Qui-Gon through his grief, but, and here is something that sort of goes hand in hand with the mature conversations that Jedi should go through in order to understand their emotions. Obi-Wan doesn't know how to help Qui-Gon deal with his grief. He's never had any training, quote unquote, on how to help someone deal with loss. And he stumbles around. Not that Obi-Wan doesn't try, he does. And let's face it, Qui-Gon is not open to any help. But it's another aspect of training that you would think Jedi would have to go through beginning during their Padawan years. How to help people go through the stages of grief. In my opinion, for a young readers series, this arc dealt with a lot of mature issues, and I like the way it dealt with it. It didn't talk down to the reader, but it put these issues on a level that not only young readers could think about, but that a middle-aged man like myself could think about. And I give kudos to Jude Watson for the way she wrote these 3 stories. Listener, it's about time to go. If you'd like to contact me, you can send me an email at swlegendslounge@gmail.com or send me a message on Blue Sky, Instagram, or Twitter at swlegendslounge. Send me your questions, your comments. If you disagree with something I've said on the show, like how I think Jedi should be allowed to enter into romantic relationships as long as they have the maturity to understand what goes along with being a relationship like that. If you don't agree with that, let me know. I'll read your opinion on the show. And send me your favorite Star Wars character groupings. Again, I haven't received any of those in a while. Coming up on the next episode, I'll wrap up the Jedi Apprentice Young Reader series with the final 2 books, number 17, The Only Witness, and number 18, The Threat Within, as well as the 2 special editions that came a little later, Deception and The Followers. Those books bridge the master-apprentice relationship between not only Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but also the relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin Skywalker. You can look forward to that episode coming out on Friday, March 6th. Listener, remember, if you want to see the full schedule of books that I'll be covering this year, 2026, you can check out my pinned posts on both Blue Sky and Twitter. Thank you so much for listening to the Star Wars Legends Lounge today. I'm Aaron Moats. May the Force be with you. And remember, there's always a bit of truth in legends.